Thanks for staying with us. Today we want to take a look at infrastructure developments in Nigeria, especially in the year 2021. Of course, a good number of us will reference the fact that the federal government has, especially from the very beginning of the year, have talked over and over again about infrastructure development, infrastructure deficit, and all of that. And one wonders exactly what is going to happen. What has happened? What's your assessment of what has happened? Well, Malcolm did say that there are some papers that are keepers. Maybe this series that we are also doing, you may want to keep them. We have three people joining us this morning to look at these issues. Balale Edward is a road safety advocate, especially she has a special interest, especially in child safety on the roads. Balale Edward, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
We also have Professor of Energy and Electricity Law in the University of Lagos, Professor Yemi Oke. He joins us here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
As well as Ayobami Oyalawo, who is a political economist, joins us virtually from Lekki. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, if you don't mind, let me start with you, Mr. Oyalawo. Perhaps there is a need to understand generally, when we talk about infrastructure, what are the components? Many people would probably assume that when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about maybe just the physical infrastructure, just the roads. Give us an understanding. When we talk about infrastructure gap, infrastructure deficits, infrastructure development in Nigeria, what are we talking about?
Well, good morning once again, Ayo, my namesake. When we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about a whole lot of things. We're talking about, yes, the roads are a huge component of infrastructure, but we also look at some other things like the rail, the ports, the housing, as it were, and also you talk about some other infrastructure like electricity, the dams, it's a whole gamut of the things that makes life easier for people to live so that you know that you're living in a modern world. I mean, what differentiates us today from those people who lived in like 200-300 years back was infrastructure, as in you can wake up now and decide you want to go to London and you spend 6 hours in the air and you're in London. But before, maybe you have to be 3 hours on the, 3 weeks or longer on the sea to go there. If you want to go to Kano from Lagos right now, you could fly 2 hours, you're in Kano, which you cannot do some years and years back. So those are the things that differentiate, or the things to make us live more pleasant lives. Electricity, road, railway, telephones, and so many other things that make up what you call the infrastructure that makes up a country or a nation.
Well, thank you. Prof, let me come to you. One of the I just needed to lay that foundation so that people know that when we're talking about infrastructure, it's not just roads we're talking about. And your own specialty is, special interest is in energy and electricity law. In terms of development in the energy sector in Nigeria, what would be your assessment of how far we've gone?
Thank you very much. I'm going to break it into three. When we talk of infrastructure, particularizing that to energy and electricity, which is my passion, then we look at accessibility, affordability, and the sustainability of it. Let's just take a cue from what you have in here. You just read, Nigerians paid 565 billion naira for electricity in 9 months. That's just a conservative figure. How much have we paid as Nigerians for diesel and gas and petrol consumption to augment electricity? How much did we spend as Nigerians to fuel our cars? A whole lot of issues. So it's not affordable. It's also not sustainable because we have not even expanded the net. We really need to expand it so that we have options. Then let me now go back to the other component of it. I think I was called the government like some 40, I mean, of course, I'm not a difficult lecturer when it comes to grading anyway. I was called government like 55% because of one major thing. Because several regimes, several governments have had difficulties pulling through with the petroleum industry bill then. But this government has succeeded in giving us Petroleum Industry Act. And so much has been happening in the industry. I've been doing training upon training local and elsewhere on what it is. What are the things we need to do to get it right with the Petroleum Industry Act? It's a very comprehensive piece of legislation. If we could, and I hope we will, be able to implement just 45% of essential provisions of the Act, then we'll start itching to the right direction in terms of energy now, but because that's the first time we'll have gas being regulated in Nigeria and a whole lot of things. So on that, but on the other component of energy, still a long way for us to go.
Okay, well, at least 55% sounds like a pass mark to me. But
that's for PIB, not on electricity. Okay. Because with the PIB, then we can start to get
we'll go to the other details. You are actually a difficult lecturer at giving your marks. But let me come to you, Ms. Edwards. Road safety is something you have advocated over time. Now, we're talking about infrastructure development, talking about roads. The report you saw earlier talked about pockets of roads in the nation that have received government's attention. And there are those who are still asking for more. There are those who have used the roads that government has, the federal government in particular, has touched, will be glad. Those who have used roads in the areas, in their states, which the state governments have also intervened, will be glad. But then there is still quite a significant gap. In your assessment in 2021, how well did we fare in terms of road infrastructure?
Good question. $100 million question you've asked there. As a road safety advocate, I mean, there's nothing we can achieve when it comes to safety on the road without making sure that our roads are in good and perfect condition. And looking at 2021, 365 days now, I would say for a fact that we are not there yet. There's still so much to be done. The report what we have says that we have 195,000 kilometers of roads that are paved in Nigeria, which I think is still a very far cry from what we're looking at if we must reduce mortality on our roads. Of course, road constitutes a lot of it constitutes to the wellness of every Nigerian. It contributes to people arriving at the destination safely. So I must say that a whole lot of roads are still in a very deplorable condition, and government still have a lot to do. And we're looking forward to a 2022 whereby they will deliver some of these roads that have been promised. We've been told that we have about 21 roads that are going to be constructed in 2021. And with the private funding that has also come on board, we hope to see that more roads are being done. But for to look at the standard that United Nations has put forth, we're still a far cry. But we're hopeful that 2022 will be a better one.
If you don't mind me, taking you on further on that, Professor Oke mentioned just a little while ago about sustainability in the energy sector. In terms of sustainability of the roads, there is a responsibility for government at various levels, but then there is a responsibility for the people as well.
Absolutely.
In terms of engaging people to ensure that the needful is done in that regard, how well would you say we have fared?
Wow, really, really bad. The situation is bad out there because I don't know what to call it. Should I say that it's negligence, ignorance, or stupidity? Roads are not being well used. You see, I mean, I can use Lagos State for an example where I live. Lagos State is doing quite a lot of infrastructural developments, you know, making sure that we have sidewalks. And what do you see people do to the sidewalks, on the sidewalks? They sell. They merchandise things on those sidewalks. And people can't go on the ramp. People can't walk safely. Pedestrian, the available pedestrian route has also been taken over by people. And you begin to wonder that, is it that we do not know the right thing to do, or we're just ignorant, or we're just so wicked that we do not like to take care of the things that have been put in place? But I must say that we can't stop educating. Education, advocate and inform. You can't go wrong when you inform. We may just assume that people know how to use this infrastructure, meanwhile they don't. So I must say that 2022, a lot of advocacy and information and education must be put in place.
Well, let's stay on that a little, Mr. Oyalawo. So it is one thing for governments at various levels to, you know, make these things available. It's another thing altogether for the people to take ownership of them. And so the question then would be, what has been missing so far by way of engaging people to make sure that the infrastructure they are provided are used by them sustainably?
Well, I can't answer that for government because I honestly don't know what their plans are for engagement. However, to take it from what the lady just said, people need to be a bit more responsible in the way we use infrastructure. I was driving between Lagos to Ibadan to Ogbomoso just this week, and I saw a lot of things on the road that shocks me. Some trucks were overloaded to the point that even without using the weight bridge, just me sitting there in my car, I could see that these are carrying overloaded materials, so that the weight of those trucks on the road are generally going to destroy the road within a short period of time, which means if the road was built to last for 10 years before it is upgraded again, it won't last that 10 years. Same way I saw vehicles, smaller cars, smaller minivans and buses overloading themselves with goods. I even saw one petrol tanker that was coming from Ibadan to Lagos, loaded with a lot of, I don't know what are in those bags. So these are some of the challenges. And like she also mentioned about the people using sidewalk, you can also refer to people who, rather than use the pedestrian bridge, would rather cross the road and put their lives at risk. You can also talk about people who steal infrastructure on the road, and I mean there are side railings on bridges. Some people just go there and remove them. There are covers for manholes, for gutters and drainages, and some people just make it their businesses to steal this infrastructure, thereby defacing and making life difficult for the rest of us normal human beings. So those are challenges, because you can sit here every day and abuse the government for not doing what they should do. But when government has done what they should do, will it be okay for human beings not to act the way human beings should act? Because I honestly don't know how else we need to educate people to know that to go and take railings from the bridge, remove a manhole cover is a normal thing. I don't see anywhere in the world that is normal. So those are the challenges, because government will naturally be spoken to do what it should do. But human beings need to also behave the way human beings should behave, so that we all will enjoy this infrastructure. Like the professor in your studio just said, sustainability is a part of infrastructural development. If you build things and people destroy it, I see people get angry. Today you come and burn tires on the road. The moment tires are burned on the roads, any road, just observe it. When you burn a tire or whatever you do when you are angry or you say you are protesting, the moment it rains the next time, that part of the road becomes riddled with potholes. So these are some of the challenges with infrastructural development. Human interference, human destruction. We as people need to do better. Every day we compare ourselves to some other countries, but people in those countries don't behave the way we behave. So we need to behave the way human beings should behave so that we will have a longer and more sustainable development in terms of infrastructural development.
Well, let me come to you, Prof. Let's just move away from that for a bit. But it is still related. For instance, earlier in the year, we heard that it was actually the Vice President that reaffirmed the federal government's plan to start the 15 trillion naira infrastructural corporation of Nigeria, Infraco. And of course, it will be funded by CBN, AFC, NSIA, and other institutions like that. A public-private partnership such as Infraco will definitely depend on the use or abuse of people to ensure the sustainability or otherwise of it. Yeah, right. So in terms of some of the issues that have been raised by your co-panelists and the intervention of Infraco, what are the hopes of sustainability?
Thank you very much, Shayo. Again, I appreciate you for that important question. Infraco, well-conceived idea, and it's nothing new. Though now Infraco attempts to do it at a relatively larger scale. But we've had public-private partnership before. The MM2 is a partnership that we can reference. Then the Lekki Toll Gate is another private-public partnership that we can reference. The NLNG, Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas, is a kind of private-public partnership that has worked. The current structure of the Nigerian railway, we now have this system now coming back on stream. It's a good example of private-public partnership that can work. Then the question is this, just as other members of the panelists mentioned, each time people apply the rail station, the question is, oh, this is good, but can we sustain it? The question of sustainability is really not for government. Infrastructure is there. We should own the process. No, when they were talking, something kept recurring when she was talking about attitude of Nigerians. Each time a car is in motion and somebody lowers his glass or a glass to throw empty cans or bottles of water, I was like, my goodness. Oh, government should now also be trailing them for doing that. So that is
there are those, my apologies. There are those who reference that in Singapore, you can't do that in Singapore.
You can't do that. You can't do that in Ghana. You can't do that in any decent country. The thought of you drinking your pure water or bottled water or Coca-Cola or whatever, right while you are speeding off, you lower your glass, you drop it. The commercial vehicles, you see people throwing cans like this flying on the road. Then it rains. Then the first thing that happens is the drainages are blocked. Then the water flows on the road. Then the roads are damaged. Then you say, now, of course, it's public funds. They will keep, elsewhere. If your road is well constructed, you probably will not need to reconstruct in 50 years. So you now divert public funds to creating or establishing more roads or other infrastructure. But if it's constructed and it's not maintained, it's not sustained, it's damaged, then government will have to continue maintaining or building another, or reconstructing. That is it. Go to the toilet facilities at the airport when it was really refurbished. Go there now. We have this attitude of not owning a public asset. And there's the Nigerian thing that we also need to get done with. On our home part, we go elsewhere. You don't even think of doing those. You can't do it. The system is self-sustaining. There's an inbuilt self-responsibility mechanism that you can't just even think of it. Because it's your own asset. It's a public asset for public good.
Perhaps that information needs to be drilled down to people. But look at Infraco's intervention with regard to the energy sector, your own, specialty.
Yeah.
Do you see anything significantly being done? You talked about some things. You said, for as far as the PIA law is concerned, government was a little over average. But then you said, in other sectors of the energy, space, you can't really say that. What did we miss in the year 2021?
We missed quite a lot. The PIA should have been a law to drive the system like for 20 years. We've always had gas. Now we're talking of gas to power because really we don't want to rely too much on hydro to generate electricity. But we've left gas undeveloped for decades. We've left gas financing unattended to for decades. Quite frankly, it is the PIB that regulates gas for the first time. Gas as a component of the energy sector was never regulated. You'll be wondering that gas was not regulated.
Is that why the prices of gas is left to international space?
No, gas is an international commodity, and that's one of the reasons why we're having a bit of challenges in the power sector. We want to power through gas, essentially. Now, we're doing a lot now to use those associated and unassociated gas for also the power sector. Once gas is produced, it's an international market. It's sold abroad at internationally competitive
There are
rates.
those who are wondering, wait a minute.
So now, you're telling me to produce my gas, somebody's ready to buy it at $5, and then I should sell to the general system at 100 naira so that you can use it to power electricity. It's not going to make economic sense.
Well, you are talking about the one to power electricity. People are talking about the one they use at home.
The way we're going, as I said, we look at trends. Development, technology will throw up options and alternatives. And we're getting there. Okay. You see, most homes now, people think we started with inverters. People now use solar panels, and we're improving the efficiency of those. Then we're going to have local manpower in that regard. We're now going to see Nigerians producing batteries that are the size of this building that can power a whole city. Elsewhere in India, in Germany, people don't even talk about all those small batteries are now mega batteries now, like solar-enabled battery that can power a whole. So, Nigerians, in terms of technology, I think we're catching up. Okay. She mentioned a lot of all those hubs now. Nigerians are actually doing stuff right in that regard, so that we don't even need now to start to import those. Once we now scale up local manpower capability, then we don't need to go import those panels. Your next door neighbor will start manufacturing panels that are quite efficient and sustainable. You're going to remove those meters. You're going to remove those disco thing. You power. And again, I said, if they keep increasing electricity tariffs, it will get to a level at which generating through solar, diesel, or petrol will be cheaper. So Nigerians will just pack up those things. Just as it happened in telecoms, alternatives will be thrown at us, and over time things will readjust itself.
Well, how long is over time? It's a question a number of people will be asking.
That's a multi-million question.
Yeah, I'm sure that Mark, my colleague, would also want to weigh in, but that's and a number of other things we'll discuss when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Well, thanks for staying with us. Some of those information, especially the one ascribed to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation in July, talked about a 23-year, 2020 to 2043 National Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan that identified critical enablers. And it also continues that 2.3 trillion will be required. That's it right there, translating to about 150 billion naira annually. And the private sector and other partners have to provide 56%. Of course, the federal government will provide the balance. This is talking about infrastructure generally. And, Madam, when we talk about infrastructure, the first one that usually comes to mind are roads. How significant, in your opinion, is that fact that the public is now a public-private partnership-enabled infrastructure development plan?
Yeah, in any developed country or developing country, you will know that PPP is, it's a good opportunity for the economy to thrive, to develop other things that needs to be developed, like our infrastructure and things like that. And we're not also an exemption in Nigeria due to all the PPP arrangement that is on, talking about the NMPC fund scheme, talking about the SUKOK, road tax as well. I mean, with all of this coming on board, I see, with a private partnership with the government, I see our roads, there'll be more roads network, there'll be structured, and of course, for us in the safety corridor, more lives will be saved. So it's a welcoming development, and we can't go wrong when you have a private partnership with the government. You can't go wrong.
Well, let me come in here, if I may. Well, let me first of all say Happy New Year in advance to our guests in our Lagos studios and also joining us via Zoom as well. We sincerely hope that it will be a big year for us when it comes to infrastructure. And it's interesting how the conversation has also talked about our attitudes towards the use of this infrastructure. Let me start with Professor Oke. You talked about how a lot of what we use is not really affordable for the average Nigerian. But when we look at the cost of providing this infrastructure, is it so much that it's not, the average Nigerian cannot afford it, or that the earning power of the average Nigerian needs to be increased to match up with the sort of infrastructure which we're looking at developing for the country?
Thank you, Malpe, and Happy New Year in advance to you. Though you've abandoned us in Lagos here, that's not a problem. To answer your question, I think on the issue of national integrated infrastructure development plan, we're still getting it wrong. Fantastic plans on paper. We cannot afford it. It's not sustainable. It's expensive. Nigeria cannot afford $150 billion per annum. It's not realistic. At the end of the day, even if those stuffs are provided, those will definitely not be affordable by the people, because you're going to build roads, go to toll the roads and expect Nigerians to pay. That's okay. That's the problem. So if you borrowing money or you partnering with the private sector, a good idea, then the roads are constructed, then the natural reaction of the funders is to recoup their investment as soon as possible, and that necessarily will mean those roads will be tolled. That's one. But let me now give you a model that we're not celebrating. And I'm not saying it because of my home background as somebody from Ogun State, Abeokuta to be precise. The Amosu model is a fantastic model that should be replicated. Abeokuta was a civil servant city, and the governor decided to focus on one thing: road infrastructure. Massive. Today, Abeokuta is, if not the fastest growing city in Nigeria, it definitely will be one of the fastest growing cities. And subsequent administration, including the current one, had no choice than to continue from where the regime stopped. If we replicate the Amosu model in like 20 states in Nigeria, we can't continue this federated arrangement even for infrastructure. I have issues with it. In the power sector, we are saying federated grid is not realistic, it's not sustainable. We can't be talking of national grid in the 21st century. We can't be talking of national infrastructure master plan. As if federal government does not partner, if federal government does not spend money, we can't have good roads in Lagos, we can't have in Bayelsa, we can't have in Akwa Ibom, we can't have in Ondo. That shouldn't be. We should have decentralized infrastructure master plan. We should have infrastructure master plan that stimulates infrastructure development from the grassroots. Trunk C roads, mud roads, untarred roads, to create access to the rural areas for them to bring their product to the city centers. Some roads wouldn't need asphalt, they wouldn't need to be tarred. Some would just need a bit of grading so that it can create access from the remote village so that they can bring their product to the city centers. Then you don't need to come from Abuja to come and tar the road that leads to my father's village in Alalbata. No, though Alalbata is now a federal university anyway. The state should be allowed to also stimulate development, infrastructure development from within. We can't federate everything. That nothing happens by way of development, by way of infrastructure development, by way of energy, except it's from Abuja.
Prof, if you can hear me.
Yes.
I was asking if the plans, the fact that a state has a state development plan doesn't mean that the federal government cannot have a national development plan as well, a national infrastructure development plan. They're not mutually exclusive, are they?
I agree with you. What I'm saying, my point is this. The way, these are nothing new, to be honest with you. Years back, I was part of the Vision 2020. All this master plan, all this visioning had been there. Before Vision 2020, there was Vision 2010 or something. We have been visioning. We've been having the master plans. What I'm saying is this. Both for the energy sector, both for roads construction, health, and education, there is a gap in the arrangement that we have. And that is why some people talk about we need to restructure the federal arrangement. Federal government ought not to be overly concerned about roads and infrastructure as if everything must be top-down. Top-down model of development should be done away with. You don't see top-down the model of development in any country. It should be bottom-up. Let's have multiplicity of roads, be it third roads, standard roads, substandard roads at local government, at state levels. Let federal also do its own. At the end of the day, everything is interlinked. We can't say because federal government has these beautiful plans for infrastructure for road construction, then it's so expensive. Because it's so expensive, it's not affordable. I just gave you an example, the example of Ogun State. None of the state is told, go there and see flyover and see good road networks. And there are also intercity roads that is growing. Let's have it replicated. Then there's going to be a road that takes another axis to the federal road, talking of Lagos Ibadan. That's how to develop. It cannot be federated arrangements. It has to be decentralized approach to infrastructure growth and development. Let me now repeat myself. I'm not as optimistic as to the so-called integrated national integrated infrastructure development. We cannot be nationalizing or federating developmental plans now. Let's have a decentralized infrastructure plan that makes states and local government critical components and partners in this. So when you are discussing with those private sector people, they can also speak with federal government representative and Ogun State representative and take 2 roads from Ogun Lady to Federal Road Lady. That's how development is done. It is integrated and decentralized, not federated. Because you can't do development top down. It has to be bottom up. And it's done all over the world.
Let me come to Madam Bolanle Edwards now. Madam, you are very big on advocacy, you know, especially for road safety. Interestingly, I had a conversation with the Minister of Transport recently. I found it very interesting that even though, you know, transport is about, you know, the movement of goods and services from one point to the other, oftentimes we do a lot of it by road, but the Ministry of Transport is not encompassing of roads per se. Oftentimes when we think of roads, we're thinking of the Ministry of Works. Well, he told me that they usually come up with the policies for the use of the roads. I imagine that's why the Federal Road Safety Commission is under the Ministry of Transport. And I was asking what policies that they have come up with, and he told me that they'd like Nigerians to embrace the use of bicycles. And I found that quite interesting because looking at our culture and where we currently are, much as that might be a laudable project and much as that might be perhaps a welcome development, especially when you now look at the conversations around removal of fuel subsidy, etc. How far away do you think we'll be from, you know, having such a plan, something that allows people not just walk, which we already have problems with, but also be able to use things like bicycles?
Well, that's laughable, I must say. I don't know how we can survive, you know, cycling in this part of the world. It's good on the papers, but I don't see it as something that is feasible. I mean, when you look at our road network, even as it is already, there is no provision made for cyclists. So if you're thinking of bringing that on board right now, I don't see that happen. Why? Fine, we see people who use bicycle for exercise. Then again, you're asking the Nigerian driver on the road, do they have the respect for road users? Do they have respect for pedestrians? Do they have respect for people who are cycling and all of that? So there's still so much to be done in that area. The Federal Road Corps, FRSC, as it were, you know, they are doing the bit they can in collaboration with other NGOs to making sure that our roads are well used and also making sure that we reduced the deaths on our roads. But looking at you're talking about the use of bicycles. Like I said it's laughable because I look at it and I said, okay, fine. If we're to have a sustainable transportation system, whereby we want to reduce the use of fuel, diesel, so that even we won't have to deplete the atmosphere, as it were. In Nigeria, I don't see that happen. Maybe we should continue to make use of what we have, even though it's expensive as it is. I mean, I was reading on social media yesterday where somebody who was driving a Tesla that uses electricity, the car stopped on Third Mainland Bridge. And I'm asking the question, was it that there was no light for the car to be well charged, or it went out of power, you know, things like this. So we must have the provision made. We must be ready for it. Sustainability is a very key issue. If we must go into all of those things, then we must be ready to be able to sustain them. Thank you very much.
You don't ever see a situation whereby there could be a shift, perhaps spurred by leadership, that this is where we're looking at, and this is something we think that maybe culturally we could begin to imbibe. I mean, isn't it just a matter of changing culture? After all, a lot of people are already beginning to embrace the fitness culture, and we're seeing a lot of that even in Lagos where you are. Don't you think it's something that can happen?
Well, it can. I won't overrule the fact that it can happen. But you see, mindset is a powerful tool. A lot of our people in Nigeria have this fixated mindset. We don't have that growth mindset. I'm not saying everybody does have the fixated mindset, but a lot of people do have the fixed mindset where they're not ready to grow. You know, just a handful of people have the growth mindset whereby they're ready to embrace technology, embrace development, and embrace whatever comes their way. But you know, Nigeria will tell you, I've been driving for the past 30 years. You can't come and tell me that when I'm on the inner street or the inner corridor of my street, I should wear my seatbelt. I haven't died, and I don't think it will kill me. You know, you see a Nigerian and you're asking the question, but why would you, for heaven's sake, put so much overload? You have a car that has should take about 5 people, you have about 8 people sitting in it. It's also mindset. So when you come and you tell them those things that you're trying to educate, it's not that they do not know. They do know. But you know, you're coming to tell them all over again the things they should know naturally. And it tells you, I'm sorry, that's the way it's been done. After all, we're in Nigeria. When we go outside of Nigeria, things are done properly because you're scared of consequences. But when you're back here, it's business as usual. So I'm not saying it won't happen. It can happen. But attitudinal change must start with each and every one of us.
Let me come, excuse me. Let me come to Mr. Oyalowo now, who's a political economist. Now, a lot of the reasons why we actually need our infrastructure is really, apart from the fact that it eases movement and eases businesses, it's also supposed to support economic growth. Looking at how we fared in 2021, how much of that would you say that infrastructure we developed or are developing could impact on the economy, especially as we move into 2022 and seek to move past the COVID era, which wreaked a lot of havoc on many economies, particularly that of Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Mokwe. I haven't seen you in like 100 years now, so it's good to see you. Quickly, before I answer your question, I need to correct an impression that the Prof created. Actually, that you have a national development plan does not stop states from doing theirs. If you know how Nigeria is designed, states have areas that belongs to them. In terms of road network, there are state road networks, there are federal, there are local governments. So the fact that federal government has the national development plan does not deter a state from going through with its own state development plan. And I will give you examples. While the federal government today is busy building a lot of roads and rail networks, if you look at some very key states, you look at Kano, you look at Kaduna, you look at Lagos that I am currently speaking from, you see massive road network going. So one does not deter the other. It is because we have some lazy state governors that we think, oh, it's top down. I don't agree with him. The National Development Plan does not stop states from having their own state development projects and plans. It should complement each other, like you rightly put, but one does not stop the other. Now, to answer your question directly to me about how infrastructure can support the economy, a lot. I'll give you an example. We all know how terrible it is to drive between Lagos and Ibadan until the rail was commissioned just recently. And I have seen example, I've seen how the growth of the railway between Lagos and Kano, Lagos and Ibadan has helped in terms of movement. I will also bring you back to using the roads. I was opportune to travel once, it's been a while now, between Lagos to Bomosho. Then I moved from Bomosho to Ilorin, then to Abuja by road. And I saw a lot of things on the road that day. I saw plenty of trucks carrying food, destroying, decaying on the road because the truck had either broken down or got into some very bad portion of the road and it cannot move. So infrastructural development is such that, one, if we have good roads, this movement will be easier. But beyond the road, if you have been following the news recently, we have the Kano, Kaduna, even though it's not the standard gauge, the rail has been moving, and I saw people moving food. And I also saw that we have refrigerated coaches now that can move refrigerated food and products from Kano up to Lagos. So this these are one of the ways, or some of the ways we can develop infrastructure. And also, if we follow the news, also I remember recently there was the massive road development. I say road. What is it? These gas pipelines. So if we are able to conclude on this project, it will reduce the number of trucks moving petroleum product from one state to the other. You and I, we don't even need to start talking about this. Lagos is a massive example of how these plenty trucks can make life difficult for inhabitants of the state, choke movement, and make commuting very difficult project. So if we are able to get this infrastructure right, because I also remember the Minister of Transport talking about the fact that most of the rails will terminate in the port. If these things are done the way they're supposed to be done and done properly, we will have enough, we'll have less destruction on the road. And also in terms of housing, infrastructure, we should know that housing is part of infrastructure. And if we're able to get as many housing on board as we are seeing, because I remember the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola, commissioning so many houses recently. While I was in Abuja, I even attended one of the ceremonies. These are things that will move people away from poverty, because housing is a basic necessity of humans. It is not a luxury. Housing is a basic need. So these are projects that are being embarked upon that, if properly concluded, will reduce poverty, will make businesses more efficient and move better, because moving goods and services from one point to the other is an essential part of growing the economy. And you will not grow any economy when people cannot move from point A to point B successfully. So I think the plans that are being put on right now by the Ministry of both Works and Housing and Transportation, I think they are very good. I can see on the screen now the Calabar Itu Road that will terminate at Cameroon. So for me, the government is doing what it needs to do. I just hope the citizens complement their effort. We don't sabotage what they are doing. I remember the prof talking about the fact that people talk about sustainability, but sustainability is not for government, it's for you and I. You don't go into the railways, for instance, now you sit on the train coach and you go and remove the charging port that they have put there for people to charge their phones. You destroy the toilet, you destroy the seat, and then you come and blame the government. We are supposed to be human beings, and we need to act like human beings. So government will do their part. You and I must do our part by ensuring that this infrastructure are sustainable. We don't go and remove manhole covers. We don't steal
that advocacy will certainly go out, and I'm sure that a lot of our viewers are taking note, because we also have a duty to, stop people whom we see trying to deface things that is for the use of everyone. But, one part that it seems to be out of our hands really is security, and we know that the issue of security has had a very big impact on not just the cost of infrastructure but also the use of this infrastructure. A lot of people now, I'm sure they would like to go by road, and I'm sure a lot of people are traveling by road in this season, but a lot of people are doing it in anxiety, and it ought not to be. Even the development of our rail lines, we've also seen that particular one impacted by security development as well. How big a threat do you think this is going into 2022?
While I'm not a security expert, I will say that some of the problems are there. I cannot come here and deny that we don't have security problem. However, I think sometimes they are over exaggerated. I have, like I told you, I just came back from the Obomosho-Ilori axis just yesterday, and I drove. There was no challenge on the road. Yeah, I know some part of the north, especially the Sokoto, Zamfara, and Kaduna area has been bedeviled recently with so much security problem. And these are natural challenges that we are facing. However, the government is doing its part, and I will tell you how they are doing their part. Recently, I read the number of ammunition being bought, planes, jet fighters and everything. But what are the people also doing? You see, security is not just soldier, police work. It's my job too. If we don't report criminals within us, we keep talking about intelligence gathering. How do you gather intelligence? It is when we see strange movement, strange people in our midst, and we report it. That is how the police, the soldiers, and whoever we call security agency gather intelligence. I keep telling people, the people creating these problems are not spirits. They are human beings. They are in our midst. If we see
that's one
people,
way to look at it, Mr. Oyalo. My apologies for butting in because we need to begin to wrap up very quickly. That's one way to look at it. I mean, talking about security in that regard. But very, very quickly, 30 seconds both ways. Let me begin with you, Prof. In terms of securing infrastructure from such things as vandalism, what's missing? And what do we need to do? Is it that the people are not ready to take ownership of these things, or there is a disconnect somewhere?
There's a disconnect, quite all right, because the model of development, that's why I disagree with Hayobami. The model of development is faulty because we can't continue to do that. No, even the road safety people will talk about, if not for Trace and LASMA, how much of effectiveness will you see on the side of road safety? Okay. The state must play critical part. They're talking about road shows. I'm not so enthusiastic about roads because developed countries are taking cars off the roads, creating alternatives. So we have to partner with other actors
subnationals.
To secure subnational. That's how to stimulate.
Madam, very quickly, 30 seconds. Where is the disconnect for you, and what do we need to do to bridge that disconnect?
Yeah, the disconnect for me between the populace, the governments, it's a very wide one. And I would say that because you see that people at times are just adamant. They've made up their minds. And when they say the government, they say, well, I'm not the government, so there's no ownership. So let's begin to hone the things that have been put in place by the government. We have a government.
All right. Well, we have to say thank you again. There's so much to unpack in this conversation, but we just have to let it go at that point. Bolanle Edwards is a road safety awareness advocate. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We've also had Professor Yemioke, who is Professor of Energy and Electricity Law, University of Lagos. Thank you so much for your time today. As well as Ayobami Oyalo, who is a political economist. He joins us virtually, and he's proud to call himself my namesake. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're back after now. Please stay with us.